Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, Wise.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, W-I-Z-E. I have a very special guest. He's a fellow podcaster. He is the CFO, founder, and co-host of Next Level University. Welcome to the show, Kevin Palmieri.
Wise, thank you for having me, my friend. I'm excited to chat all things podcasting.
Oh, yes, the pleasure's all mine, brother. The pleasure's all mine, because you have a really dope podcast, man.
I appreciate that.
So, all right, one of my things is, what got you into podcasting?
Yeah, it was kind of an accident. I think for most people, something happens and they say, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast." So I made six figures. I made $100,000, and I remember I opened my final pay stub of the year, and I assumed that this quote unquote success was going to make all of my problems go away. It didn't. It actually made me realize that I had not done any of the inner work. I realized, Wise, that for most of my life, I'd lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious was hyperconscious. I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And that was just it. I wanted to have deep conversations with deep humans, much like I'm sure we're going to do today. And that was it in the beginning. It was just me being passionate about conversation and saying, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it, but I want to learn how to do it. And that was it. I started in 2017.
So did starting your podcast lead you to starting your business, or did you already have your business and then start the podcast?
No. So I started the podcast. So after I made the money and I started the podcast, I fell out of love with my job to the point where I hated it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to do this podcast thing. But in the beginning, it's not very sustainable to do that because you're not making any money.
No, absolutely not.
I started calling out of work. I started showing up late. I would leave the job site early. And it got to the point, Wise, where I was so miserable at my job that I was debating suicide. And after that happened, I ended up leaving my job a few months after that kind of rock bottom moment. And that's when I went all in on podcasting with my business partner. And then it was probably like a year and a half later when I said, hey, I can't do this for free anymore. I have to find a way to start making money or I'm going to run out of money. And that's when we really started to build the business after we had the consistency of doing an episode every week. And at that point, I think we were doing multiples. And then we really understood our audience at a deep level, which helped. But it really was, okay, I'm doing social media. We're doing interviews. I need to start making money. So I started coaching people for free. And then after a couple months, I just went to those people and said, hey, I can't do this for free anymore because I actually have like 5 people that I'm working with. What do you think of $50 a call? And that's how our business started. Our business started with free coaching and then us coaching people for $50 an hour. That was the very beginning for us.
Yeah, it's like with me, I'm getting to that point where I'm really don't want to be at work and I want to focus on doing this full time. Because I do 3 live shows a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday now. And when I first started, I was strictly audio, and I would release an episode once a week or whatever. And then I transitioned to pre-recorded video last year, and then just a couple of months ago, I transitioned to live shows, and it's been to the point where the audience is growing and I'm wanting to do this more. I'm finding myself leaving work early, wanting to do this much more frequently because I don't enjoy working for someone else. I don't enjoy helping someone else build their empire, build up their wealth, and me have something here that I love to do. And that I know if I really work hard at it and be consistent, which is something you said that is key, be consistent with it, I can actually make a living doing this.
Yeah.
And so little by little, I'm learning skills. I'm editing other people's podcasts. I actually started producing a friend's podcast. And it's these little things that are helping me get to the point where eventually it's going to be like, all right, I'm retiring this job because this is what I want to do. I love I love being able to talk to people and have some great conversations and learn while I'm doing my podcast.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have a lot of people I have a lot of podcasters who are independent podcasters who want to make this a career but don't know how.
Mm. Yeah.
So I love bringing on guests that can help with that. And
Yep.
as I said, you have a top 100 podcast, man.
The one, and I appreciate that. The one interesting thing that I think most podcasters need to realize is and I don't mean this in a negative way, but the odds of you going the advertising, sponsorship, affiliate market and making a living is slim to none. I mean, you just need. We're doing right now 20 to 30,000 downloads a month. That wouldn't be sustainable for us, right? Like there's no way we would make that kind of money off of it. Now it's interesting, and I think this will evolve as the podcast market increases, but now services, the hosts are offering you quite literally pennies, but they're offering you, I think it's like 1.4 cents per download to let them run sponsors or ads on your show. I think that number will come up in time, but the way for most people, it's going to be through one-on-one coaching. It's going to be through group coaching. It's going to be through courses. It's going to be the thing that is you adding the most value to your audience ultimately. Podcasting is not a passive thing like a lot of people think it is. It really is at the top of your business. You got to add more value. You have to nurture your audience through every single thing that you do. And then at the bottom of your business, you have to have some sort of value proposition that helps your audience get a result that they want. I haven't seen anything work as well as coaching because, I mean, $150 for an hour of your time versus say you have a mug that costs you $1 to make and you sell it for $5, you get a $4 profit. You got to do that 45 times to make that kind of money.
Yeah.
The numbers just aren't there for most people when it comes to that. So I think that understanding is very important. If you have 100 people listening to your show, the odds of you being able to just go get a free client are pretty high. I mean, if you start talking about it on your podcast, hey, I'm looking to do some beta coaching. I'm going to be taking 5 people, totally free, no strings attached. I just want to see if coaching is for me and get to learn about the audience at a deeper level. You'd be surprised at the conversion rate of something like that.
I've never thought of something like that. I've honestly, me doing what I'm doing, I've always thought that, like with me, like I said, I've picked up clients by offering my services as far as editing and helping people create their podcast, because I know what I went through when I first started. Like I know I didn't know anything about SEOs. I didn't know anything about descriptions, thumbnails, any of that.
Yep.
All I did was upload and release an episode. I didn't put descriptions and any of that.
And then hope for the best.
Yeah. But slowly but surely, I started doing my research, started learning from people, started networking with podcasters that have been doing it for years. And they're explaining to me, this is why you need to put a thumbnail. This is why you need to put a description. This is why you put hashtags. This is why you do all these things to help your podcast to a different audience. This is why you go on other podcasts, because you reach a different audience when you appear on other podcasts. So slowly but surely, I was learning new things. And again, we go back with consistency. Once I started being more consistent with my podcast, with my releases, with doing everything I had to do to help promote it, my numbers started growing. People, and when I first started, it was hard for me to get a guest. It was real difficult, and eventually I kept going, trying, and they started tendering the yes. People started tuning in. People started listening and sending me messages like, hey, I heard your podcast. I would love to be a guest. I think I can provide such and such services to your audience. And I'm like, cool. Like, all right. I remember when people were like ignoring me or ghosting me completely, and to be able to see, like when I first started, like I said, my first episode was like 5 minutes long, but it was just, I had been wanting a podcast since 2019, and I was just making excuses like, oh man, who's going to want to listen to me? I sound horrible. Nah, I'm not going to do this. And then one day I just finally just pressed record, and I recorded me and my nephew. I remember how I started. I held the cell phone to the mic because I didn't even have the jacks the jack from the phone to the mixer because I didn't have one yet. I didn't know all the equipment I needed. And so I just held the phone to the mic and he spoke through the mic, and it was 5 minutes long. And then the second episode was 7. And with each episode, it just started 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I just started getting more comfortable with it. And once I really started having, because when I first started, it was just me and my nephew, or sometimes it would just be me coming on and ranting about work or whatever was going on, politics or whatever. And I enjoyed the podcasting. I enjoyed talking and all that, but I just didn't enjoy the content. So when I switched to the conversation pieces and being able to have some great conversations, I was like, and focusing more on creating positive content and not just relying on what was in the media or what was in the news or all that. Things started switching. The energy switched, and the people that I started speaking with and the guests that I started attracting were just great. Like the energy and just the conversations that I was having, I was learning so much. So it got to a point where I was like, I started feeling kind of selfish because I'm learning so much and I'm getting to speak to all these amazing people. And one of my guests said, no, that's not being selfish. That's self-love. That's you wanting to learn. Because if you weren't sharing the content, then you're being selfish. But you're sharing this content and you're sharing these people's stories and you're sharing what they're doing out there. They're like, nah, man, you're doing the right thing. Yeah. And when they told me that's when I really started grinding. I started really making sure I was just being consistent with it, just making sure I just kept going, and just like I would take a break when I would feel like that I'm burning myself out. Like maybe I should take a couple of days off, a week off or so. But I had so much content that I could take a couple of weeks off and still release an episode a week. So being consistent was really key for me. Yeah.
One of the things I get asked most often, and I feel sad that I can't give a better answer, but people say, like, how did you do it? And we just never missed, Wise. We have 1,130 episodes, and since Alan and I partnered up at episode like 20, we've never missed. That's how we've done it. We just don't miss. And like, we don't miss I miss social media posts occasionally, but we don't miss. We're just very consistent human beings. One of the other things that I really think is, it seems like it would be common sense, but common sense isn't always common practice.
No, it's not.
Right? Understanding your audience, who is listening to your show. One of the biggest issues that I see with shows is they're not niched enough. They want to talk about everything with everybody. It's very hard to build an audience that way. I know Joe Rogan did it, but again, 99.99999%.
Joe Rogan, yeah.
Right? They're not Joe Rogan. So you have to be very, very clear in understanding my podcast solves blank problem in blank way for blank people. If you can get down to that level of clarity, then you really start to attract your ideal listener. And that's just another layer that when I do, at this point, I've done hundreds of podcast breakthrough calls with people I have never met. So I got a real good idea of, well, how is the podcast industry trending? How are people doing? Most people have no idea who their listeners are. If you don't know who your listener is, so think of it this way. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is the question I ask. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you know your listener? Somebody will say, it's like a 4. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you nurturing your listeners through adding value at multiple points of your business? And they'll say like 6. Cool. On a scale of 1 to 10, at the bottom of your business, how aligned are your offerings in terms of what's best for your audience? And they'll say, 7. And I say, I understand what you're saying, but the fact that you only understand your audience at a level 4 means the other 2 things can't be any higher than that. Your numbers are off. You just don't know it. The reason you're not getting results is not based on what you think. It's probably based on your lack of awareness of who your audience is. That is the first thing. That is the first thing that you have to understand. And that's where I go back to doing stuff for free. In the beginning, I'm of the belief that people shouldn't give you money in the beginning until you have a warm enough relationship with them. I really believe that. So when you're doing free calls, when you're doing free podcasts, when you're doing free live events or whatever it is, monthly meetups, what you're doing is you're giving your audience the opportunity to self-identify and come out of the woodwork and say, I am the type of person that listens to Wise. Then you can get information on your audience. And then that's how you build those deep relationships based on value.
Awesome. It's been great because for me, I'm still learning my audience. But I have a solid following. I have people that have been following me since day one, and they continue to support me and they keep cheering me on, and I love that. And people start thinking, "Wow, I need to grow my audience to 10,000." I figure like if I get 1,000 loyal listeners that support me, that get whatever I'm offering, the programs I'm offering, they buy it, and that's good compared to having 10,000 people as what are downloads but aren't really supporting you, aren't really buying your programs, aren't really taking the courses that you're offering, or taking whatever, or even participating even in some of the free stuff that you offer. They're just like, okay, all right, whatever. They just graze it. But when you get that core 1,000 people that are just truly following you and listening to you, and if you put out a course or purchasing it, that's awesome. That's like that's to me is having, like I said, having more than the 10,000 that aren't really supporting.
Yeah, we just got a speech. So I live in New Hampshire. My business partner lives in Massachusetts. We just got a speech in Wisconsin. So we're going to fly out to Wisconsin. I don't know if it's next month, but it's 1,100 kids, and I think it's like 60 members of the staff. But think of it this way. This is a great way to think about it. It's 3 rounds of 330 students. So it's going to be 3 separate speeches with 330 students. If you got 330 downloads last month, you might think to yourself, that's not that much. Go talk in front of 330 people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
And that's what people don't look at it that way.
I know.
Podcasters don't look at it that way. If you get 500 downloads this past month, like you said, that's 500 people you've reached.
It's a lot of people.
It is. Because if you was in a room, if you were in a room and you saw 500 people in front of you and you were speaking in front of them, you would be like, wow, this is a lot of people.
I'll be crapping myself is what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen, Wise. But this is the thing, too. You have to understand, as a podcaster, it's so important to measure and recognize the data. If you're not tracking your listens every day, you're missing out on a massive amount of data. Track your listens, graph them, research your episode titles. Episode titles are so important. They're way more important than people realize. I just got off a coaching call with 2 clients. They rebranded and then they rebranded again. And I said, hey, we have to bring these titles up. These titles are not good enough. They're not going to attract people in. They've had the highest 3 months they've ever had 3 months in a row. I know why. It's not that they lost these listeners. It's that they weren't bringing the listeners back because their titles weren't captivating. I think that your titles should be I don't know the exact percentage yet, but I think it's like a 60-40 split of curiosity and certainty. Curiosity, 5 ways to build confidence. The curiosity is, well, what are the 5 ways? The certainty is, I'm going to leave this episode with more confidence than I came with. That's a great title. So understanding the importance of titling, that's where a lot of people, they don't know their audience. And if you don't know your audience, you don't know the words that they click on. You don't know the buzzwords that they're searching for. It makes titling your episodes really hard. And you're missing out on some very easy impact. The people might be there, but they might look at the episode and say, yeah, that's not for me. Maybe next week.
That's why I met you through Podmatch. We connected through Podmatch, and I love the platform. It's a platform where they're actually giving something back to the creators.
Yep.
If you sign up for the podcast hosting package, they actually share a commission of what they get from certain clients that they have on the service. And to me, that's amazing because I don't any of the other platforms that I use don't do that. And so they give you the link where if someone signs up through your link to be as a host or whatever other packages, you get a commission monthly from that link, from that one client. And that's something to me was dope, because I'm like, this is giving someone who doesn't have the biggest audience and biggest followings an opportunity to make some money and feel good about, like, even though it's a little bit of money, but it's you're like, wow, I made this much. Because I when I signed up in June, I was from June. I paid June, July, August, September, and I've been paying every month. But in September, I cashed when I cashed out at one point. I cashed out for $119. When I said, when I had spent $18 in 3 months.
That's nice.
To me, that's like, and it's just to be, and to me, it was dope because I don't charge anybody to be on my show. So to be able to get paid to actually conversate and do what I love to do was like, okay, you're gonna pay me to do what I want to do, and I'm having a great time doing. All right, dope. Let me just continue. So I promote it. I share the links. Anytime I see it, and that's something that a lot of people that are coming to podcasting their problem is they don't know where to find guests from.
Yeah, for sure.
When they're joining Facebook groups, and of course, when you join Facebook groups, you begin to, I'll sell you. I would promote your podcast for $20 and get you 10,000 downloads. Whereas if you join a platform like Podmatch, they use AI to actually match you with your guest.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so when trying to, when someone asks me a question like, how do you find guests for your podcast? I'm like, I use and I use different platforms. I just don't only use Podmatch. I use Matchmaker FM, a couple of other ones, and then I use certain Facebook groups as well. So I tell people, you go look for them. At first, I didn't know anyone in podcasting. I had to do my research. I had to go and do the work. You're not going to come into podcasting and you're going to get all these guests to go and come enjoy, do your show. Because I'm like, dude, no. Hey, this is no, you don't have the numbers. And that's one of the first things that's the first question some people ask me, like, how many downloads do you get a month? How much episode or whatever? I'm like, I'm just starting out. And they're like, no. But eventually, as I got consistent and started doing more shows, and people started saying yes, and I got one of my biggest guests this year was Bob Doyle, and that to me was amazing because The Secret. I love reading. I enjoyed reading the book, and I love the documentary, the movie as well. And to have his team reach out and be like, Bob Doyle would like to be a guest on your show was like, wow. That to me was like, okay. I just had Alex Sanfilippo in September. He is the creator of Podmatch. He's been doing this for quite some time. I actually got the honor of meeting Alex at Podfest this past May. And to have him on my show and have a great conversation with him, to me was dope too, because he's someone I look up to as well. As someone I'm like, I consider a mentor, because whenever I reach out to him and ask him questions, he's more than willing to help. Yeah. And to be able to speak to these people is like, if you would have told me this 2-3 years ago, I was like, nah, you crazy? I'm not gonna be able to speak to these people. I don't know. I'm not that big, or you're just like, I don't know if I'm gonna be that successful or whatever it is. But to have them actually be a part of my show is like, all right, I got something going. This is dope. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a great time. And it's just me finding what I love to do, my passion.
It's a small world. And this is the thing too, and it's weird. When somebody comes on your show, they kind of benchmark where you are. It's almost like, all right, yeah, I remember that Wise guy. Oh, wow, he's done 300 episodes since then. I had this really, really, it was a very humbling, weird, in a good way moment. You know Evan Carmichael? You know who Evan Carmichael is?
Yes.
We had Evan on our show years ago. And he said, yeah, I'll give you guys 20 minutes. I'm doing this, like, this world, national tour. So I'll be driving around. I'm only doing 20-minute episodes. And we're like, whatever, 20 minutes is great. Like, we're in. So we get on the call with him, and at the 20-minute mark, because I'm always focused on time and making sure the guest gets off on time. I have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm a logistics guy. And I was like, Ev, we'll let you go. Thanks so much for joining us. And he was like, no, keep going. You guys are awesome. I want to keep going. So we ended up doing an hour with Evan.
Wow.
So fast forward, and this is the interesting thing. We over-delivered. We over-delivered with our interview skills. He and his team emailed us and said, hey, Evan is hosting some people to interview him in Toronto. Do you want to come up to Toronto Dance Salsa, which he owns, and interview him? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. So we packed up all our stuff. We drove 10 hours to Toronto, and we interviewed Evan. When we were up there, we were having an event in Florida, and we wanted Evan to speak. So when we were up there, we brought it up to him. He ended up speaking at one of our events. Now, this is the weird part. We crossed episode 1,000, and that's something we talked to him about a long time ago when we were at like episode 100. Yeah. And he sent me a DM out of nowhere, and it was so awesome. He's like, Kev, congrats on 1,000 episodes. I see you guys are crushing it. Let's do a reunion episode. Like, let's do a 1,000 episode reunion. I'll come back on, reach out to the team. At one point, somebody who we were just so excited to get on the podcast is now DMing me saying, hey, congrats. And that's awesome because real recognize real. Like, somebody who is consistent showing up every day, he sees that in somebody else, and he wants to mentor people like that. So to your point, people are watching. It might not seem like it, and they might not come out of the woodwork for a long time, but people are watching what you're doing. And this is the other thing too. I would say this is probably the most valuable piece of advice I could give a podcaster. Two things. One, study business. If you have a very limited understanding and knowledge of the way business works, sales, marketing, margins, profit, the way to build an actual business system, study business. The second thing, treat your podcast like a business. One of the things I see in so many people wise is they wait to invest too long. It's like, well, I'm not going to get a new mic. I don't make any money yet. When you're starting up a store, you got to buy the store long before you have the customers or long before you have the revenue. In order to grow your podcast, sometimes it's going to cost you money up front, and you got to be willing to take that risk.
You're absolutely right. When I first started, I started with a Behringer Studio. I paid $160 on Amazon for. It came with the mixer, headset, and the mic, and it did the job. I get furloughed from my job in March of 2020. And so I'm getting extra money from the government, whatever. And instead of going out and spending money on clothing or sneakers or something stupid or whatever, I go and decide that I'm going to invest in a Rodecaster Pro. I'm going to get me a mic. I'm going to get me a quality camera. I'm going to invest in some lights because I felt people started really tuning in and listening and downloading. And I felt like, hey, these people are giving me something very precious, which is their time. Now it's time for me to step up and give them better quality sound, better quality video, and just improving on my overall podcast. Because if I seriously want to do this, then I need to improve. I can't just continue to be the same way. I need them to see the growth in the podcast. I need them to see, hey, I remember when he started out and he did 5-10 minutes, and now I'm doing 35, 45 minutes. Yesterday, I was speaking to someone, they were like, oh, we're gonna go probably for like 35, 45 minutes. We almost spoke for an hour and a half. And it's being able to do that and be proud of that, of the sound that I'm putting out and the quality that I'm putting out, because I felt that if I'm serious and this is what I really want to do, I have to invest in myself. Yeah. I have to take the courses. I have to take courses on helping me improve, learn marketing, learning how to grow my audience on YouTube, learning how to promote on TikTok, learning how to promote on Instagram. I need to learn these things because this is only going to help me grow my podcast.
Yeah. And all that stuff that you learn, that becomes parts that you can monetize. The fact, I would tell all podcasters this: if you like audio editing and video editing, you're closer to a business than you realize, because nobody else does. That's just a fact. Nobody else really.
No.
Yeah, when you go in Facebook groups, what is the number one post? Hey, how do
You
I audio
edit it.
edit?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do I audio edit? Is anybody in here want to do it? And then even deeper, how do I video edit? How do I video edit? I remember seeing, Joe Rogan is one of the reasons I was aware of podcasting. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah.
A lot of people started podcasts because of
Joe Rogan. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I remember I used to see these teaser clips. There were these really cool clips on his social media from the podcast. And I remember telling Alan, I said, if we want to grow, we got to do that. And he was like, all right, man. One of my friends is a director. He uses this program called Adobe Premiere. Download it and figure it out. And I was like, all right, cool. It took me 16 hours, and I'm not even kidding. It took me 16 hours. My laptop crashed twice, and I had to buy a new laptop to make the first 1 minute teaser clip. It took me that long to make 1 minute of a teaser clip. Now our production company, very similar to what you're going to be doing, that part of our company was over 6 figures last year. That was based on a video that I created because I had to figure out how to do it. Now I have the knowledge to do it. So when we found a team, it was like, all right, this is what is working. This isn't what working. Let's try this. Let's improve this. Let's get rid of this. It's not worth it. It helped me understand what was actually valuable for other people. But that was a massive amount of pain. I hated that. I don't want to do that for 16 hours. But in the long run, much to your point, into your approach, that will be something that you can monetize. 100%. 100%.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I do now. I edit other people's audio and video feeds.
Perfect.
That's how I'm able to make some money. Besides looking for the sponsors and looking for the ad money, because it's people think they're gonna jump in, they're gonna get 10,000 downloads, and the ads are gonna just come pouring in. And why not monetize skills that you develop from doing your podcast? And one of the things I developed was editing. Started using Canva, started creating thumbnails. Those are things. Another business you can help sell thumbnails to people who don't want to do the thumbnails for their podcast. There's so many different things. There's so many different ways I've been able to monetize myself, and it's not relying on ads and it's not relying on sponsors.
Well, you got the hustle. And that's, you have to ask yourself, why are you starting in the first place? If you're starting a podcast to do less work and make more money, I hate to break it to you, but you're most likely not going to make it. No. I know it's the sexy thing, and you see a lot of people doing it.
You're going to do a lot of work. Expect to do a lot of work.
You got to do a lot of work, especially in the beginning when nobody's listening and your social media feed's getting nothing and nobody wants to come on your show. You're quite literally building a brand from the ground up. Yeah. And you have to understand what that's going to entail. Now, I know you hear this person sold their show to Spotify for $100 million and this person sold their show to Spotify for $40 million. Again, those are the outliers. That will not happen to 99.9 repeating % of humans.
No, the ones that you hear are the people who have a brand, or people who have a name. Yeah. So it took Joe Rogan a long time to build up his podcast so he can get that $100 million contract.
Yeah.
It was he hadn't just started. People see the success now, but they don't see all the hard work you go through.
Yeah.
They don't see the nights that you spend editing. They don't see the nights the mornings you wake up like, oh man, I gotta get this out. I gotta get this done. They don't see that, oh man, this guest called out on me. I gotta find another guest now in less than an hour or so. They don't see any of that. They just see the success part. They only see once you hit the top, and they're like, oh man, look how easy he has it. He's get this money now. And no, I worked hard for what I'm working hard at what I'm doing. I'm trying to build something here. I have a 9 to 5 and I still come home now, and Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays I do my lives, and Thursday, Fridays I focus on editing other projects for other people. And so I have to schedule out. Then I still have to find time to promote on social media and help grow my community. And it's not easy work, but when you love what you're doing, it's so much fun. Yeah. So why not get paid to do what you love to do?
Yeah, it's the best. I always say that I think many people have their P's in the wrong order. They start something because it's profitable and they try to convince themselves that they're passionate about it. When if you start something because you're passionate about it, you will quite literally be forced to learn how to stay in the pool and swim. And I think that's the best thing in the world. If you didn't like this, you would never go through all the stress of doing it. But the fact that you love it, you're quite literally saying to yourself, how do I keep doing this? How do I do more of this? How do I get better at this? You gotta love what you're doing, because if you don't, you're not going to want to commit to getting better. And then you'll never end up getting the results. That's why you gotta love it. If you don't love podcasting, it's probably not for you.
For you, yeah.
It's not for you.
Everybody screams about the 2.5 million podcasts have been started. How many are actually active right now?
Yeah. 25% of that, 30% of that.
Probably even less than that.
Yeah, probably.
I think it's less than 500,000 podcasts are active.
Yeah.
So, and because people start a podcast, they get 6-7 episodes in, and then like, this is a lot of work. I can't do this no more.
Yeah.
and then you find a lot of shows that just have 6 to 10 episodes, and that's it. And they haven't released the episode in a year or two.
Yeah.
Because once they start, they start to realize, man, it's not easy. Yeah, there's so much things you got to do.
Yeah, it's a graveyard. I have clients that come to me and they're like, hey, I'd like to name my podcast blank, and we'll look it up. And it's like, they're like, oh no, that person has it. And I said, they haven't produced an episode since 2018. I think you're going to be fine. Like that show is no longer in existence. It's just not. So don't worry about it. If you can, the important understanding is oftentimes, and it's not across the board, but oftentimes the lower the barrier to entry, the higher the failure rate. Understand that. Anybody can sign up for a gym. You can go to the gym and just, right, give them $29, sign your name, and you have a gym membership. But it's very easy to do. It doesn't mean it's going to get done. Yeah. The lower the barrier to entry, the higher the failure rate. So just understand, I've seen a lot of people that started at the same time that we started that they made it 5 episodes, they made it 7 episodes wise. Some people made it 100, right? But then it was like, I'm either A, I'm not getting the results I wanted, B, I'm not having the impact I wanted, C, I don't love this like I thought I would, and maybe it was on to the next thing. The other thing too is it's not for everybody. Podcasting is not for everybody. No. Being on camera, speaking, interviewing.
It's not for everyone, no.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And for me, I've applied for to speak at Podfest, because this past March I did my first speaking engagement for a guest of mine. It's like, I'm holding a women's event and I would love for you to be a guest speaker. And I was honored. I was like, okay, I never really thought about going into that realm. And for her to ask me to be a guest, that like really opened up my eyes to other opportunities. So I was like, you know what? I want to apply to be a speaker at Podfest, because podcasting is something I love to talk about. I have something I feel I have value to bring to the table. And so I'm waiting. Hopefully by today or tomorrow, today or Friday, I will know if I was accepted into it. But it was me stepping out of my comfort zone, and I guess to me it was like the next logical step. It was to go into public speaking.
Same. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it, Wise. But my business partner was like, well, we're podcasters. I mean,
you speak already, right?
Yeah, speaking's not that much different. Hey, it's different, isn't it? It's a lot different.
It's a lot different.
It's a lot different.
But once you get comfortable and you start talking, and it's like, okay, I can do this. And at first I was nervous, but by the end of it, people were like, oh man, great job, get a good job. And that was like, to me, like, all right, okay, I could do this.
Survive.
I'm alive. I didn't have a heart attack while I was doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the most valuable things. And you said that earlier. You don't get a lot of opportunities to sit down with somebody for an hour and just kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about. Podcasting gives you that unique opportunity, because you never know. Somebody messaged me today about being in their book. It's like, oh, cool. I didn't expect that. That's not what I wanted. I didn't ask. Cool. I had another person that I did a call with today that said, hey, I want to put you on a list of people that I'll reach out to when I'm looking for speakers. Cool. I love that. That's awesome. Right. But that's number one, because I've done so many episodes that I've practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And the compound effect of everything that we're doing is paying off. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen in 5 years if you start today. As long as you're consistent, I can guarantee you'll have more results than you have today. Will you have the same amount of results? Maybe not, but you'll have more results than you do today for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And that's again, that goes back to being consistent, that you have to continue to put out content so people will realize like he's serious about what he's doing.
Yes.
This is someone who's dedicated to what he's doing. Let's see what he got. And that's the only way to grow. To me, I would have never thought I would have 3,000 subscribers on YouTube, over 1,500 followers on Instagram, over 1,900 followers on TikTok. Those numbers to me they might seem small to other people to me, but they're big numbers to me because I wasn't someone into media. I'm a table games dealer as a profession. So yeah, I interact with customers and stuff like that. I kind of build that through my job, is being able to know, because when you're a table games dealer, you have to be entertaining. You have to, while you're taking these people's money, you have to entertain them. So you got to make them laugh. You have to have good attitude and stuff like that. So
if not, they're not going to like you. I mean, they're already not going to like you that much.
Listen, I've been called plenty of names, believe me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, hey, look, this is what you get. It's called gambling for a reason. It's not called winning. It's called gambling.
And I explain sometimes, like, oh yeah, sometimes when people find out that I'm a table game dealer, oh yeah, is there any tips you can give me so I can win? I'm like, yeah, stay out of the casino. Yeah. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, stay out of the casino. They're not built for you to win.
Yeah. I don't think anything is. That's the interesting thing is, honestly, podcasting isn't built for you to win either. It's built for the cream always rises to the top. If you can be more consistent and get a little bit better than everybody else every day, you can win. But the vast majority of us statistically won't, unless you go above and beyond. That's the thing. It's the effort, it's the awareness, it's the consistency, it's the commitment. That's what separates people who start podcasts to people who end up making them into a business. But I'll also say this, and I do think this is important. I always want to say, and I say this to my clients, our results are not typical. Like the fact that we make, multiple six figures where we're at, that's not typical. And most people won't. So I want to make sure that everybody has their own unique measure of success. It probably isn't what we're doing. There's two of us. There's a lot going on. There's, we have a 15-person team. There's a lot that is going on behind the scenes that people don't know yet. So that's important too. Make sure you're creating your own unique idea of what success is.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, I measure my success with how many people, like the messages that I receive from people like, oh, I needed to hear this message. I had to hear this interview. That interview was dope to me. That interview really, me and a friend of mine, we did an episode, and he's a real successful real estate agent in Brooklyn. And we just had a great conversation. We talked about self-development, goal setting, law of attraction. We just had a great conversation. And someone who went to school with us heard the episode and sent me a message and said, listening to you guys speak and the conversation you had pushed me to start my business. I had been on the fence about starting my business, but listening to you guys talk about manifestation, goal setting, building, trying to build a business and all this inspired me to start my business. And thank you. And that message to me was like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I want to do, because I love those messages. Those are the messages that I want. That's the inspiration I want, is to hear people say that I'm bringing them value, that I'm helping them change their lives.
That's the biggest reward you can get. That's it. I mean, when you start, that's what you want. You want people to listen and you want to have impact. Everything else is just like a bonus. It really is. It is. Somebody asked me that today. They said, like, what do you do? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, what do you do, like, every day? Like, why do you do what you do? And I said, because I want to help. I want to help. I don't ask how many downloads you have. I don't care. Like, whatever. We're going to have a good conversation and I'm going to learn something. Hopefully you're going to learn something, and that's it. Like, let's do it. I like podcasting. I like talking to people, whatever. You know why? I remember what it was like to have 5 downloads an episode. And I remember getting a lot of people said no. I remember. Yeah. I remember that. And I said, you know what? When we
I will never
quote
be that
unquote
way.
make it,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be that way. Now, eventually, will that happen? I don't know. It's not there yet. So I'm going to keep hammering. And at the end of the day, the person who adds the most value wins eventually. And that's a belief that I have. If you add value and you just go add value and you expect nothing in return, that's rare. That is just a rarity nowadays. It stands out.
And that's another reason I feel people tune into the show is because I just be myself.
Mm.
And that's and I allow my guests to be themselves. And I don't want people like, oh, why don't you script it? I'm like, because then it won't be authentic. People can tell when you're not being yourself. And for me, it's like, nah, I just enjoy having a great conversation. I want my guests, yes, they're here to promote or whatever, if they got a book or whatever they want to talk about or courses or whatever. But I want people to realize that, hey, this is a regular person just like them.
Mm.
This is someone who isn't a big time celebrity, but they know what they're talking about. They're expert at what they do. And they might have a story to share as well. So
Yeah.
it's to me, it's a win-win, man, for me.
Yeah. It's got to be. If it's not a win-win, it's a loss.
Yeah.
If it's not a win-win, it's a loss. And you got to find as many win-wins as you can. Well, you have losses, I'm sure. I'm sure you've had episodes where it was like, oh, no.
like nails across chalkboard.
That's par for the course. That is the goal is to never make the same mistake twice. Not to never make a mistake. Just try not to make the same one again.
Oh, no. I've honestly, I've probably recorded audio and video combined. I've probably recorded over 300 and something episodes.
Mm.
And maybe out of those episodes, probably I could probably count on one hand how many episodes I didn't enjoy.
Mm.
And there's a couple. I'm like, yeah, I'm not releasing that episode. That episode will never see the light of day.
We've been there.
And I don't blame the guests. I blame myself. I'm like, what could have I done to make the episode differently? So I don't really blame the guests. I chalk it up to it's a learning lesson. It's a lesson. Yeah. It's a lesson to be learned. So
yeah. I blamed a couple of the guests. Why? I'll be honest. I blamed a couple of them.
It was a couple of them that just. Yeah,
keep it real, you know?
I had this. It was a couple of them that it was that they brought no energy to the interview.
Yeah.
Like they just wanted it to be. It sounded just like it was just like everything they were trying to say was like, I don't know, they were just trying to give answers they thought I would want to hear. I don't know. It just didn't sound. It just didn't feel. It just didn't enjoy the conversation.
Yeah.
So those episodes won't see the light of day.
Yeah, we've been there. It's par for the course. It's par for the course. Do you do solo episodes still, or do you just do guests?
No, I haven't done a solo in a while. Well, I just did a live solo a couple of weeks ago because I guess my boy Brian Snow, he overslept. He didn't make it, but he has a good excuse. So he's still recovering from he's recovering from cancer. So he still has his moments where he's still tired. So I understood the reason. So, but there's moments where things happen, life happens, and you can't get upset over that.
Yeah.
So I've had issues where my camera cuts off or one of the funniest things, I had my grandson came into the studio and he walked under my desk and he saw the big bright light on my desk and decides that he's gonna go press that button. And I'm in the middle of an interview having a great conversation and everything goes black. I'm like, and I look down and he looks up and he has these beautiful brown eyes and he's looking at me and he's like, hey, Pop. And I'm like, I can't get mad. I gotta laugh. Because he's just looking up to me like, what did I do? Yeah. And I'm laughing. But the crazy thing was the guests kept talking and kept the show going until I got back on.
That's awesome.
Because they were podcasters, so they knew something happened. They're like, all right, we can't have this dead air. So then they just started talking and just. So it was cool to be able to have someone pick up the slack or just keep it going while I recover from this technical difficulty.
Well, I think that positive attitude is one of the reasons you'll win. You're gonna have failures. That one of the reasons I like to think I'm decent at this. I do think I'm good at podcasting. I've done it so many times. The reason why is I've just made so many mistakes. I mean, 1,100 some odd episodes. That's 1,100.
You're bound to make a few mistakes.
Yeah, right? It's like, all right, show up tomorrow and try not to make that mistake again. And you got better. The reps. If you can do the reps, sky's the limit. Sky's the limit.
I remember when I was doing audio and I actually forgot to press record and we spoke for like hours. So, and I go to realize, and I'm like, I didn't press record. Like, oh, damn.
Did they redo it? Did they redo it for you?
Yes. Nice. Yes. We rescheduled and we redid it, but we laughed about it though. And but then the second episode was even better because we had already had a great conversation and we knew we could flow and all that. So the second conversation was even better.
Yeah. I've made the mistakes. I can't get mad at somebody else for making them. I've made the same mistakes. I forgot to hit record. I didn't charge my camera. I didn't turn on the mic. It's whatever. It happens. So if it happens to you, whatever. It's par for the course.
It's a lesson learned. I'm now I make sure that I make sure it says record. Make sure it says recording. But all right, so it is time now for you to I'm gonna give you get the solo screen and you get to plug away.
Oh, it's simple for me, Wise. I keep it easy. We have a podcast called Next Level University. Our motto is self-improvement in your pocket every day from anywhere for free. That's what I always recommend people go to because you'll get a good understanding of who we are and what we like to talk about. And if you have any questions or you need support on anything, please do not hesitate to message me. My handle is @NeverQuitKid on Instagram. I do all my social media and I would love to get to know you.
All right.
Simple, Wise.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
But don't leave just yet. As soon as I do my shout outs, we chat a little bit off the air right quick. I got a couple of questions to ask you, whatever.
Please.
But all right, let me just do shout outs. All right, so big shout out to everybody who showed up in the chat. A Pizu, Andrew, V Lock. What up, Big Hawk? How you doing? Big shout out to my Real Wise fam, Bobby J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady, Fina. Love you, baby, and appreciate everything you do for me. Big shout out to my guest, Kevin Palmieri, for coming through and sharing his story and sharing what he knows about podcasting, man. This was great. I had a great time. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter @wise_b_blunt, Instagram @wise_b_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook.com/wise76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.